Hey everybody, welcome to Houston with a Problem live show Monday. It's like a 14th live show, I believe. Uh, Let me know the microphone reset itself because this is the wonderful thing that I have to deal with. Uh, just tell me if it's awful. I tried resetting it to a good level, so yep. Let me know. Uh, I can't quite get the microphones to ever work in my favor here. Although the people at Blue have sent me the little screw so I can attach this thing and actually get it to work. So welcome everyone. Um, what's happened this week so far? Not much. AMC went off the threshold list, and audio peaking a little bit. Okay, let's try to bring that down some. I brought it down a little bit, so hopefully that will do it. Too much echo. Mic is a bit harsh. Okay. Sorry. Let's try. How about there? Oh, that's good. All right. Too loud, too high, too loud. My gosh, I hate this system so much. Okay. Brought the mic gain down. Oh, we're turning the gain down even more here. All right. Sounds horrible. Crunchy. Better? Okay. So let's hope that works. Yeah, so AMC went off the threshold list. Uh, uh, what's his face? Of course, names are always escaping me. Someone mentioned earlier, did a video about the possibility that there are swaps inside of ETFs that are being traded, and that's resetting. Now it's over amplified. Well, distorted. I'm just going to turn this thing way down and see what happens. Yep. And desktop audio down. Oh. Well, it's better when his voice is quiet. Sorry, the microphone reset on me, and I can't figure out why this thing hates me so much. I have two little dials, and I'm trying to get them to work right, and everyone at home is going, ah! Now it sounds like I'm speaking through a plastic bag. Fantastic. Okay, so that's as much as I can tweak it right now, so I'm going to go with that. As I was saying, AMC went off the threshold list probably due to these swaps, as mentioned by Chris something or other. Chris. Oh, I can always forget names. I wish I had a better. It takes me when I meet somebody, it takes me 20 times to remember their name, and that's probably my kryptonite right there. Yeah. Where is that mentioned in the chat here? Somebody mentioned it and then it vanished. And Charlie. Yeah, sorry. Charlie Charlie Capital. What was his name? I don't know, but he put a couple of videos this weekend where he did deep dives into these swaps that are between banks. They're kind of tied in with treasury bonds, possibly the repo market. I'm still trying to wrap my head around it, but it appears that when the swaps went through, it reset the FTDs because they all got swapped on the 9th, I guess. And the 9th is when AMC went off the FTD list, and there was not enough buy pressure to do anything about that. Charlie's Vids. There, thank you. Charlie's Vids. You guys are wonderful. I am terrible. And there wasn't enough buy pressure to take to actually close or cover those positions. So they think those swaps, by just basically putting them into somebody else's name, reset the FTD clock. And yeah, so that's where we are with AMC. The other interesting thing is that the borrow rate on metamaterials hit 60%, and the short interest is like 150%. So, I think we might see. Audio's terrible, man. Audio. I wish I could hear what you guys hear, but never comes out the same way. I can try to get the microphone a little further away from me. But it's showing me the levels totally in the middle on my screen, and that's the best I have. Sorry, now people are saying raise the volume. I hate this system so much. So if the volume's too high, I mean, you have to turn the volume down because I can't adjust it anymore. I've adjusted as much as I can. All right. So metamaterial is shorted like 150%, and the to borrow is 60% interest right now. So I think that we might see some craziness happen when they get to the T35 date sometime. Would be at the end of this month or beginning of August. I can't remember. 35, probably beginning of August, I think, is when they hit T35. So the metamaterial volume, as with the volume on a lot of the shorted stocks right now, it's just minimal. So you've got a stock that there's several hundred million shares in float, and it's trading at 20 million a day, 30 million a day. So that's kind of where we are. It's I'm super distorted, man. Okay, sorry. Now it's too quiet for people. It's too loud. Oh, goodness gracious. Microphone is low. Gain is too high. I have everything set at this. All right. I have 2 dials I can play with, and it's just being a complete jerk. But I do need to hire a producer. People keep telling me that, but that costs money, and I don't have enough money to hire a producer yet. If you guys can get me to like 100,000 followers, I could probably hire a producer. But yeah, that's where we are. All right, so if you can hear me, that's as good as I can do for now, because I am no expert at tweaking the volumes. We're going to spend half the show talking about volumes here. Okay. Let's try to at least get the questions here. Let's go scroll back up and see where we are. Okay, Brandon Gilbreth, I just want to know who's going to turn off the computer responsible for market manipulation. That's a good question, because a lot of the manipulation is probably coming from high frequency trading machines at various market makers and hedge funds. So when those hedge funds miss their margin call and they don't pay off what they need to, and all of a sudden they get liquidated, they don't get to buy anything anymore. The broker takes what they own and sells it and just drains them down. And when they drain them down, they take that cash and they buy whatever that is they need to close those positions. So that's when those market manipulating computers will probably get turned off, because they won't have access to them. They basically, the broker just takes a key and locks the thing and keeps them from being able to trade. So the broker does all the trading necessary to close that stuff out. So Brandon, that's kind of probably who's going to be responsible for turning off that market manipulation computer as it goes. Okay. All right. Benji Hisolar, if you sell stock that you began investing in over a year ago, but have continued to add to your position, will it be taxed as short-term or long-term capital gains? Ooh, that's a good question. I think if you sell the same amount you bought over a year ago, that will get taxed as a long-term investment. If you sell more than that, then any stocks after that will be taxed probably as a short-term investment. So, yeah, Mike's sucking today. I'm sorry, guys. So that's probably how that works. I'll have to look that up to make sure. But the reason why people invest in hedge funds and have wealth managers and things like that is that they give their money to an entity. An entity can do all the short-term trades they want, but your investment is with the entity itself. And so that's considered a long-term investment, so your taxes are really low. And that's why rich people make things like family funds, because the family fund acts like a hedge fund, but just has family as membership. So they can invest in the family fund, do all the short-term trades they want, and but the investment is in the fund itself, and the short-term trades are just the market actions that happen inside that. So that's how a lot of rich people can make all these short trades and only pay minimal capital gains on that. So that's when you get rich, those are the things that you will get to take advantage of. Okay. Last hot sauce. What do you think about Friday 005 supposedly stops the can kicking? Yeah. I still don't quite see the language in there that stops the can kicking down the road. Most of the language is about if you sell options, those shares that are sort of preserved, they get put into an account that can't be touched until the option is either exercised or that option expires. And when it's exercised, you then give those shares to the person who exercised the option. If it expires, those shares can go back into your main account. It doesn't really have any language about naked shorting, or selling naked calls, like I was hoping. It may be just the way it's worded in there. I don't quite understand. But I don't know if it really stops kicking the can down the road for them. It doesn't quite have the teeth it once did before they pulled it and rewrote it. So, yeah. Mupulin, if the NFT is announced Wednesday and they short ladder attack, how far can they drive the price at this point? Aren't they low on ammo? Yeah. GameStop just went on the hard to borrow list. So, as of today, I think there aren't too many shares available, and the interest rate will start going up. So if they short attack at this point, it's all going to be done via naked shares, or at least mostly done via naked shares. And yeah, that's I don't think it really matters how low they take it. I mean, we're just going to buy it up. It's going to be us buying it, not them. They're going to be shorting it, and we're just going to be buying more of those shares. It's not going to cause us to sell that stuff off. So, I mean, all that happens when they short attack is we get more, and we end up owning more of the company, and then they dug a bigger hole. So if the NFT is announced and they short attack and the crypto dividend goes out, then they're screwed even more. So it's their one tactic. It's what they do over and over and over and over and over again, and we just buy it over and over and over and over again. So we're kind of at a stalemate, I think, until somebody blinks. That's how I see it. Okay. MRAM's got a similar question. If GME issues a crypto dividend on the 14th, which, again, I don't know. Someone said that it's just like a test coin that's being minted on the 14th now, but I don't think we'll know until then. How much time do the short hedge funds have to cover all the synthetics? I think they would have. It would go from when they deliver. There's like a T plus 10. Somewhere in there for when it has to be put into people's accounts, and if it's not in their accounts by then there's some sort of failure to deliver the PIL, the payment in lieu, and I'm not sure exactly how long it is for the margin calls to happen, but I think it's pretty soon after that, if not instantaneous. So we'll have to see. I mean, Wednesday's the 14th. That's coming a couple of days, and I'm really curious to see what GameStop has to say about the NFT when the 14th comes, because everybody's looking at that. Last week, everyone was saying that the 14th was when ETH goes to 2.0 and Ethereum goes to 2.0, and then somebody mentioned that no, that's August 4th. I mean, there's been all these dates for Ethereum 2.0 for a long time now, and I just want it to happen so I can give everybody their Problemo coins finally, rather than have it cost me $500,000 to do it. Okay. Gamecoin coming soon. That'd be awesome if it did. All right. Oh, last hot sauce. I got an awesome last hot sauce. This is a blue fancy one. It just can't attach to anything because they didn't send the screw with it. So that's coming in the mail soon. So hopefully I'll I'll be able to hook that up. Okay. Don Von Dudeward. Houston, hope you are well. Do you think the current 40s price is real, or do you think the actual price is higher on the secondary books? I don't know about that. There was some stuff that I think was Photoshop that came out that showed the secondary books, the price being absolutely bonkers. But I don't think that's really how the OTC works. The OTC usually they're trading it for lower, and with AMC right now, the volumes are teeny tiny. The short interest is through the roof. The failure to delivers are just bonkers and getting reset through kind of loophole means. And I think we'll probably see some big green here coming up, mainly because not everyone is a market maker, and not everyone can get away with resetting these things over and over and over again. So there's going to be groups, hedge funds, investors that keep digging holes that are going to be held to the fire. So I wouldn't doubt if we see some spikes again coming up. But then again, I was wrong when I thought that we could see a gamma squeeze after they had put 40 million shares in the money, and then we saw no buy pressure whatsoever. They just let it go to failure delivers and reset everything. So, yeah. Jason Boucher. Hey, Houston, listening while I hunt chanterelles. Tastes better than rocks. I love hunting mushrooms. I just don't like eating them. Biting into one is like nails on a chalkboard for me. My forest is full of them, so I'll find lobster mushrooms, oyster mushrooms, chanterelles, portobellos. What else are out there? I always make sure that my fire pit spills over, and every spring I get a whole bunch of morels. Yeah, so I like hunting for them. I just give them to my friends, and they do stuff with them. Okay. Now everyone's saying that was too low. All right, so we're just gonna go with what the sound is going on here. Okay. Don saying he smoked his last cigarette with Vonnegut. Awesome. That's a memorable way to quit right there. Good job. Okay. Yeah, check out Charlie's vids. He posted one this weekend and one like an hour ago, discussing the ETFs, the IWM ETF that BlackRock issued. I'm still trying to wrap my head around exactly how all that stuff progresses. So please don't look to me as somebody that can answer it for you. I watched it and then watched it again, and it's still not quite making total sense to me. I just know that I think they took the FTDs they owe, because these swaps will be ways of like managing debt, and if you consider those FTDs as debt like they owe, they took it and they swapped it over here and replaced it with this, and by doing that they put a new name on the FTD and it resets. So it doesn't actually cover the position, it just kind of masks it for a while, and that's why it got removed from the FTD list on Friday, because that's when that swap matured. I think I'm explaining that right. I might need to have Charlie do another video just so I can figure out, talk to me like I'm 3 years old. Yeah, so, okay. All right. Okay, let's see. Let's get to another question. Did I miss a question while I was chatting? I did. Oh, David Morgan just saying it's my birthday again. Oh, it's always my birthday, you weirdos. Okay. And then Jimmy D. Oh, number one handsome. Oh, goodness gracious. I'm wearing my Pacific Northwest shirt today. I've got what have I have on here? Got Pike Place Market. I've got Idaho. I've got Wenatchee apples, Montana, Sun Valley on here. It's a potpourri of the Great Northwest on there. So there we go. All right, Dr. Stonk, do you think Wells Fargo closing personal lines of credit is a good sign of a credit crunch? What are indicators of market turn Moas you're looking for? I do think it's a good sign of credit crunch because the role of banks is to lend money, and the interest rates is how they make money. So if they are limiting how they lend money, I think it means that they might not have enough cash on hand to do so. It's not a good sign when banks limit what they can lend. The other things to look for, Rensol pointed this out the other day, was in 2008 they started limiting how much money you could take out of an ATM machine. That's kind of redundant. Out of ATM, automatic teller machine. Anyway, how much money you can take out of an ATM and how much you can withdraw in a day. Putting weird limits like that is probably a good thing to look for. If you start seeing other banks start to reduce, their available credit. I mean, locally, our Bank of America branch is only open like 1 or 2 days a week because they can't find enough people to work there. I mean, who wants to go work at a bank, get yelled at, have to buy a whole new wardrobe of clothes that are bank appropriate for like minimum wage while you're handling the money for lots of other people? People don't want to do that job. The banks aren't willing to use their money to pay their employees, so I don't think they're going to be using their money to help their customers either. So I think those are good indicators for banks as to if there's a credit crunch coming. Are they willing to pay their employees more? No. So they're just going to close their building. And if they close their building, that limits access to their customers to use their products. And if they're limiting access for the customers to use their products, then their customers are probably going to pull their money out or use it less. The entire reason why you offer things to your customers is so that there's more availability to get products into their accounts or into their hands. And if you're limiting that stuff, you are going to crunch yourself. When I taught at the Art Institute, they did that. The higher ups sold off all. I think I talked about this. They sold off all the land that the school owned, and the land they're making tons of money on through leases. And all of a sudden they're like, oh man, we're not making as much profit anymore. We should probably cancel some classes. So they canceled a whole bunch of classes. And then they're like, wait a minute, our revenue just dropped a whole bunch. So we should probably cancel some more classes. And then our revenue dropped anymore. Well, you dum-dums, your classes are what you're selling. If you keep reducing classes, you're reducing the amount of money you can make. So if these banks are reducing the products they offer, they're reducing the amount of money they can make. If they're reducing the number of days they're open, they're reducing the amount of money they can make. So it's kind of a self-fulfilling prophecy. This weird, like, we need to cut costs by eliminating our ability to sell things to people. Just is this ongoing cycle of reducing revenue, and then they just find themselves in a giant hole. I don't know what business school teaches people to do this, but they manage to just eat themselves constantly that way. Cole Kelly, how will MOAS affect this ridiculous housing market? Will I finally be able to afford a decent house on the AMC GME attendees? Thanks, E-Demand. Well, if we get a credit crunch, right, that means people can't get loans for their homes. If they can't get loans for their homes, then the buy pressure collapses for the housing market. And if the buy pressure collapses for the housing market, the housing prices shrink, and then a whole bunch of people end up underwater on the homes they just bought. Because, if they bought a home at $500,000 and no one can buy homes, so the comparables in the neighborhood drop to like 450, 380, whatever, then all of a sudden they're underwater on their mortgage. And if they're underwater on their mortgage, then the banks all of a sudden have a whole bunch of homes. People are like, well, why should I keep paying on a $500,000 loan while my house is only worth $380,000? And so people stop paying their mortgages. And then they have to go for these weird short sales. The banks start saying, okay, you can sell your house for less than it's worth, and we'll just call it good. And a whole bunch of money vanishes from the banks. So if you've got a pile of cash on hand from the AMC, GME, MOAS, and anything else, when this happens, you can be a cash offer for homes that are on the downward slope for buying, and I think you could probably get a home pretty easily with that. I was talking about it last week, was also look for the foreclosure auctions, because there'll be a whole bunch of bank-owned homes, a whole bunch of homes that are tax foreclosures, where the taxes weren't paid to the county government, and the county puts it up for auction at the minimum bid is whatever's owed in taxes. And I wouldn't doubt that with COVID, with the sheer number of excess deaths we've had in the past year and a half, is that we see a whole bunch of homes go on the tax foreclosure market because the owners passed away and there's no one left to pay the taxes. So we might see a glut of homes on those tax foreclosure auctions also. So I think, if you got a pile of cash in your hands from selling off AMC and GME, you should be able to buy a house after the MOAS, because the market's going to be just trying to figure itself out for weeks or months. And if we see a serious credit crunch, then the housing bubble will go pop, and it'll be easy time to buy a home again. Let's face it, the average house price in the United States is like $350,000, something like that. And in certain communities, especially coastal areas where the housing prices can be $600,000, $1 million, those home prices are significantly more than what the average person earns in those communities, even the wealthy communities. If you work at Amazon here in Seattle and you're making $150,000 a year, right? And you want to buy a house, your mortgage might be $10,000, which is basically what you're making each month. So I think the bubble will go pop, and I still don't quite understand where BlackRock's role is in this, in buying all those houses. I'm really trying to figure out what they plan to do with the 800,000 plus houses they've purchased. If there's a serious credit crunch coming, that could drop the value of those homes significantly. So I wish I could sit on that board meeting and figure out what they were talking about when they decided to do that. Okay. Cheap haunted houses, awesome. Yes, cool. Get those cheap haunted houses. Haunted house story. The little street I grew up on, Sparger Loop on Bainbridge Island. There's 15 homes on the entire street, and there was the abandoned ghost house. And as kids, we'd always go and peer in the windows, but everything was nailed shut, so we never got to go inside. And a few years ago, somebody redid the house after it sat empty for 30 years. And I was at a dinner the other night, kind of a little charity dinner, and I was talking with a woman. She said, "Oh yeah, the murder house." I was like, "Wait, what?" And apparently, about 10 years before I moved in that neighborhood, somebody was murdered in that house. So it really was a haunted house. So yeah, I grew up with a haunted house in my street. Okay. Yeah, I'm sorry, everyone. Sound is terrible. Just deal with it. I'll try to figure it out later if I can. Okay. HYG options are going crazy again this week. That's from B. I have not looked into it. I know that one of my buddies is just throwing $100 at it every week, just in case that's the week that the market collapses. It's kind of his informed lottery. It's got higher odds than the actual lottery itself, because eventually the market's going to take a dump, and those options, $100 in options, could be worth $800,000 or something. So, yeah. Sam Strayer, I received the Metamaterials preferred shares in my account, yet I sold my torch before the Thursday end of day dividend deadline. I shouldn't have received anything. Someone care to explain? That's the T+2. So if you had it in your account at close on 6/22, the T+2 was Thursday when they issued. So if you sold between 6/22 and 6/24, those 2 days, somewhere in there, there was still a 2-day resolve, and so it gets recorded in your account even though you sold before then. So I think that's how you got the Torchlight preferred shares in there. All right. Okay. This is from Resident Flea. What is up with FTFC and MDIA? Kaboom. I'll have to look those up. That might be more shorted stocks. Let me write them onto my list here. SFTC and MDIA. All right, I'm going to look those up after the show here and see what's going on with them. Code Fate 190, have the short hedge funds shorted the Russell 1000 ETFs yet? I don't think they have. We haven't seen any real volumes indicating that stuff has been shorted yet. So yeah, so I don't think, I think if we have a whole bunch of shares go in the money this week, is it this week that like 500,000 GME shares have the possibility of going in the money? Rance was talking about that. I haven't checked. I think it's this week. So if we see some like pre-gamma as the price gets pumped at the end of the week, we could probably see the Russell 1000 get shorted next week as a result. Okay. Yeah, microphone check. It's just gonna be garbage until I can figure this crap out. Sorry. Now the volume is too low. Some people are saying it's blowing them out. Some people are saying it's too low. My solution for you is adjust your volume accordingly, because I can't seem to do anything else from here. Sorry. That's the crappy world that I live in, where my Chinese microphone does not want to do what I tell it to do. All right. Well, now it sounds like okay. All right. I just adjusted it again. Hopefully it's not blowing your heads off. But Jasmine Laley, hey Houston, where do you like to research stocks? Where? I like to just lie in bed. I think that's what you mean. I think you mean like what do I like to read? I try to read. I don't have subscriptions to any of the big data producers. So, but I read what I can from like Fintel and Finra. There's, if you bounce around, you'll get articles that will mention some of the data that might be hidden behind paywalls. But a lot of those articles you read, you have to take them with a grain of salt, because you don't necessarily know if they're produced by somebody who's getting paid by a hedge fund to kind of manipulate data or information. So I just read whatever comes across, and then you have to kind of put your own kind of skepticism and cynicism to it, and suss out what is real and what is hocus pocus meant to make the hedge funds say what you want them to say. Like there was an article that popped up on Seeking Alpha that was like, well, GameStop's over. Sorry, GameStop's, and we've been reading that stuff for 7 months now. I don't think anybody's responding to it. So read everything. That's what I do. I read absolutely everything that comes across, and then oftentimes I'll just search who wrote it, and sometimes it's a fake name. You go, oh well, if it's a fake name, I'm not going to trust anything they wrote. Other times you read it and you find out that they've been saying the same thing over and over again for months and nothing's changing. So then I can ignore it. Other times it might be from an academic who's like, this is really weird. Let's explore this further. And the weird curiosity that they take can lead you down all sorts of different rabbit holes. When's it gonna squeeze? It's like I said, it's like predicting an earthquake. You can't predict when it's gonna happen. All you know is that each day you're a day closer. So, yeah, there we are. All right. Sound terrible. Terrible sound. Sound terrible. Terrible sound. That's a lot of what I'm getting right now. I'm sorry. Yeah. Okay. Looking for questions. Sorry, I scrolled too far and it just reset again. Meth Gallon, Houston, what's stopping the hedges resetting the FTDs and metamaterial? I think right now there's still accounts that haven't gotten the Torchlight preferred share dividend in their accounts. Fidelity, Schwab, TD Ameritrade all got them. I don't know if Webull's gotten them yet. If anyone in Webull has gotten them, I have no idea about other like online brokers, if they've quite gotten those yet. I think what they're waiting for is a whole bunch of synthetics to get covered, and then they might not be getting covered quite yet. So the FTDs might get reset, but if you look at the Fintel report and you look at institutional ownership in metamaterial is quite low. It's kind of like AMC in that respect. So I'm not sure how much ability there is to reset quickly. It might be on there for a few days until, like something like what's happening with the IWM and AMC on Friday. They may have to write something new and make a new swap to reset all those. I'm very interested. But when Newegg did their merger at T35, their price went through the roof. Went from a couple of dollars to like $77, and we might see something similar with metamaterial when they get to the T+35. I think it's hard to do stuff with those FTDs because the QSIP changed, and they may just have to cover. They might not be able to reset them the same way they have with AMC again and again. Mupulin, one of the concept of scarcity, make mining platinum on asteroids pointless, meaning flooding the market with supply causing a crash. Space mining stuff. That's exactly what they would do. They could flood the market, cause a crash, absolutely depress all the mines on Earth, and then at that point they can be like De Beers for the first chunk of the 20th century and absolutely control the market via a cartel. So diamonds are not rare at all. That there are kimberlite pipes on every major continent, and there's half of those kimberlite pipes have diamond-bearing material. What De Beers did was De Beers, at first, they found a huge load of diamonds in Kimberley, South Africa, and they started finding them elsewhere, and they started buying mines in Russia, buying mines in Botswana, buying mines in Brazil, buying mines elsewhere, and Australia, and all those places. And they would mine all the diamonds, and then they would keep them in giant vaults in like Antwerp. And they would keep those diamonds in those vaults and release only so many at a time, whatever the market required for the diamonds at the moment. And they could keep the price at whatever they wanted because they were the only source for these diamonds. And if anyone else opened up a diamond mine, De Beers would send a whole bunch of mercenaries and basically just slaughter everyone. Or if it happened to be like in America, they would threaten to kill them and destroy machinery and do things like that to make sure that no one else entered the market and made it look like diamonds weren't as rare as De Beers was saying they were. So if you are a space mining company and you have access to a boatload of precious metal, way more than what we could mine on Earth ever, at first you're probably going to flood the market and kill off the competition and then restrict what is available. And so you can then become the sole source for that material. And that's why it's dangerous to have one company or one corporation or one person control these metals. So my master's thesis in space studies, I wrote about these loopholes in space law, and one of them is we need to set up a claim system so that if you are a company, you can only make like one claim and work it at a time. So you can claim one asteroid, you can work that asteroid. If you don't work the asteroid, your claim expires, and you can't claim this asteroid and another asteroid. You can only do one at a time so that other people and companies have the opportunity to work this material and sell to market to keep a competition going. Whether that's going to happen, I don't know. I'm hoping that the Office of Outer Space Affairs works with international governments to start to think about these things, because there's a billion or more people on Earth whose entire incomes rely upon hydrocarbons, metals mining, things like that. And these industries, if they all get collapsed at once, we could see 25% unemployment across the globe instantly, and that's not good for anybody. So yeah, that's kind of how I think the space cartels will work in the end. But hopefully we can be progressive and think ahead of time and set some rules to keep that from happening. Okay. Matt Rodriguez, I think they'll use Robinhood CEO's phone findings to point out market manipulation with Citadel collusion, and that will force a trade halt on meme stocks. Oh, that's a good conspiracy. I know they seized Vlad's phone, right, in their investigations. Yeah, they might. That might be some sort of excuse the government uses. I mean, the government can do whatever they want when they want to. Depends on if they actually do it or not. So we'll see. I hate being like we'll see, but we're all sitting here wondering when, if, how, and who is going to do what they should. All right. It's from Sorter. Hey Houston, it's a bit off topic. Is there a particular book by Dan Husel you recommend for finding diamond claims in Wyoming? I might have what I want here. Where is it? California? Is this it? Yes, this is the one. That book by Dan Husel, Gems, Minerals, and Rocks of Wyoming. It's super informative. Just be warned, there are really random pieces of politics to get thrown in that are just like not relating at all. He's pretty sour about how the state of Wyoming treated him, and he'll mention kind of some, I don't know how to put it, like, that jerk on the another subcommittee, I hate that guy. And I just think that all these people are just mean to each other. I really can't suss out who is in the right and who is in the wrong. But I've seen Dan post some things on the internet that are pretty bonkers. But he's an amazing geologist. I just don't think I'd want to have a political conversation with him. So that's a good book, though. It is an excellent book for looking for just gemstones and diamonds in Wyoming in general. Okay. HYG markets. Trying to find a question that hasn't been asked yet. Because the problem is it takes me so long to answer that I get a little bit behind. Thrasher Canary, is it still worth buying metamaterial? It's pretty cheap right now. Could it still go up a few %? I think it has a very big chance of doing that. Just based on the fact that they're 150% short sold. The borrow rate's at 60%, and that tells me that everyone knows that there's going to be a pop in it when the FTDs go unfulfilled. So, yeah, I don't think it's a poor buy. They might push it down further because right now the buy pressure is just gone. People are just kind of sitting and waiting, and they've managed to drive the price down to like $4. But I bought it at less than $1, so I'm still just sitting there, waiting. Lupulin, do you think Blue Origin will go public? Are there any other promising companies? I do think Blue Origin will go public. They may wait for a big NASA contract. They have some small ones, like they're doing the moon lander for NASA with Allied Alliance, the Space Alliance, the Boeing Lockheed Martin partnership, United Alliance, I think that's what they're called. And what Bezos has done with his space company is pretty remarkable. I took a tour there a couple of years ago, and they basically build everything themselves. They had tried contracting with companies, and the time frame at which they would get their product and the quality would always be suspect. So people basically said, okay, one machinist in the world who can make this part, how much are they paying you? All right, we'll double your salary. You come work for Blue Origin. And they just brought these dudes in working these crazy machines, building, engine housings and other stuff. They in-house everything. So it's all basically vertically integrated, and they aren't subcontracting anybody. So they aren't relying on anyone else's time schedule. They've got their own time schedule, and they just make sure it gets done. The one big problem that these space companies have is that they're full of people. Hey, buddy, stop chewing on bones. Come on. Sorry, the dog's chewing on bones, and that's just not mic friendly today. The big problem these space companies have is that a lot of the people who work manufacturing the components are holdovers from the government programs in the 70s and 80s working on the space shuttle. So these people are now reaching retirement age, and you have machinists working on $12 million machines, and they're 75 years old, and there's no one coming in who's learning that particular trade. So we might run into a problem where the space companies have to start offering ridiculous amounts of money to bring people in to build this stuff, because young people, they don't want to learn to be machinists apparently, and they've the high school programs that got them into metal shop and wood shop and auto shop don't exist anymore. So they don't know that they can do this stuff. It's just not presented to them as a career possibility. And so we might see some sort of rebirth of investment in teaching a younger generation how to work with metals and work with their hands. I got totally sidetracked from that. The other promising companies, I would look at Planetary Resources. That was a startup from one of the Google founders, and what they've been doing, they have Astrorank.com. They've been mapping the cosmos for near-Earth asteroids and kind of showing what they're made of, how much they're probably worth, how big they are, how close they get to the Earth, and this kind of mapping their orbits. And that's like a big survey. A really cool thing they have at Astrorank is you can help identify asteroids. So they'll present images and they'll flash them in front of you, and you're looking at dots like the stars in the image. And if one of the stars moves from like here to here, you click, that thing moved. And you're doing the work of the supercomputer for them, identifying potential asteroids. It might be a satellite, it might be a known asteroid, but as long as you're identifying. And when I taught this giant math computer lab, it basically was like a glorified math tutor, for hours a day, I'd just be sitting in front of a computer waiting for a hand to go up and I'd answer questions. I spent like 8 hours a day on Astrorank identifying asteroids, and at one point I was personally responsible for like 16% of all the asteroids identified because that's all I did all day. So I got really far off track there. But Blue Origin, I think, will definitely go public, mainly because companies like that do. They once they get a big project headed their way, they're going to need to raise a whole bunch of capital. And Jeff Bezos, while he's worth $200 billion, like any rich person, he doesn't want to use too much of his own money. He wants to use your money to do it. So I think we'll see a possible IPO of Blue Origin. Bezos had asked for a $10 billion bailout a few weeks ago for Blue Origin. And why? I mean, the dude's worth $200 billion. Why does he need a bailout for a company he created specifically because he wanted to go to space? So if the government says no, then maybe we'll see some investment. It might be investment, not necessarily from the public, but we might see investment from like VC firms or other investment banks that want, we'll take 5%, we'll give you $1 billion or whatever. So, yeah. Dr. Strong says check your trade documents and Webull for preferred shares. So it must be in there now if it is. All right, cool. Luis Rojas, Houston, do you think AMC is going to squeeze having $5 billion in debt? Well, at this point, I don't think debt matters because the price of AMC is not reflective upon the fundamentals of AMC. The price right now is reflective upon the fact they got shorted too much and we aren't selling. So that seems to be exactly what's happening. So I don't think the debt really matters. If the only way the debt matters, the AMC, because of where they're registered, what state they're registered in, they can't issue a dividend of any kind until they clear their debt. And I hope that Adam Aron is working on a different method to perhaps sell shares in the company that he hasn't been doing. Marsha's how to put this. The way he sold shares over the past few months was sketchy, and I think he's learning that the people who invest in this company don't like that. So if they offer more shares, I think and I hope it's going to be directly to retail and sold slowly over time as not to impact the price too much. So I wouldn't doubt if we see them try to offer more shares in the future. I just think they're going to change the method in which they do it. Okay. All right. All right, now everyone's saying the volume's good, so I'm just going to leave it. I'm not going to touch it. All right. Okay. Jared Breaker of Worlds, if I buy metamaterials now, do I get the same benefits as Torch Preferred shares? You do not. The Torch Preferred shares were only for people who had the Torchlight shares in their account as of close on Tuesday, June 22nd. Torchlight no longer exists. All those shares got converted into metamaterial shares at a reverse 2-for-1 deal, and those all trade as metamaterial shares now. So anything you would get would come from metamaterial, and metamaterial is basically a research and development company that's starting to bring things to market. So they don't really have much revenue at the moment. They've got a pile of cash and they've got a bunch of inventions, and they're going to start bringing those to market. So they'll start getting revenue in the near future. But you won't be getting any dividends or anything out of them for a while. It's basically a long-term buy if you're going to buy metamaterial, or if you buy now and expect for a squeeze to happen, which I think is very likely. Dr. Stunk, do you think Ryan and company will pivot GME to be fundamentally valuable at current prices after MOAS? Yes. I think actually it's worth more than what it is now. I wrote a piece for the GME subreddit maybe in March, talking about, there's the market capital of GameStop, and then there's the actual market capital of GameStop. So if we look at, $200 a share for 70 million shares, you have a $14 billion market value. But if 1 billion shares are trading, because you have all these synthetics, and it's $200 a share, you have a $200 billion market cap. And I think because of this pressure to buy, that if we delete all of those synthetic shares and everyone who owns stock now goes back and buys again, then the actual value of each share of stock will be in the thousands of dollars. For a company its size, GameStop has very few shares available, and the fact that they're doing fundamental changes to their business, and they're becoming sort of a .com, and there's this potentials for professional gaming, for becoming not just a video game store, but a game store and collectible store in general in local communities, and possibly bringing in some sort of tournament gaming into local communities. I think that there's definite ability for the price of GameStop to be kind of maybe accurate now, or worth even more than it is now. And so we might see it go to its cajillions of dollars post squeeze and then flatten out at like $1,000 a share, unless they do some sort of stock split or something like that, or offer more shares on the market. So I think GameStop is actually undervalued, but that's just basically because of the dilution of shares out there. Okay. Okay. This one. Oh my goodness, I missed all sorts. Will the bank quarterly reports show losses? This is from NC's Buikis. They normally have to announce ahead of time if they're going to be experiencing losses. So when Archegos went under about a month after they got margin called and liquidated, we saw announcements from Credit Suisse, from JP Morgan, from Goldman Sachs, etc., that they were going to expect losses. So look a few weeks before the quarterly reports come out for any announcements from the banks that they are experiencing losses, and that might be a sign that someone's getting squeezed, whether the banks are getting squeezed on the reverse repo market as a result of a shrinking amount of treasury bonds available, or if they've had to margin call anybody. So we might see that they might, maybe if the way the quarter ends and the reverse repo market dumps a bunch of cash into their accounts, they might say like, oh, look at all this cash we have in hand at the end of the quarter. But then the following quarter, when they have to go back out and buy those bonds to replace them, it might show something completely opposite. They like to do squirrely stuff like that. Like the hedge funds will beg for cash from a bank, and the bank says, okay, give me collateral. And the hedge fund will give collateral and get the short-term loan back, and they'll report it as if they sold all those assets, but then they'll also report that they still hold those assets because they're collateral for a loan. And it's really shady accounting. The banks may do stuff like that too. Okay. Piven, could you talk a bit more about your thesis on space mining stuff? Yeah. So my thesis. I can post. I'll post a link to it on my Twitter. I've got it somewhere public. Basically, my thesis with my space studies degree was that the 1967 Outer Space Treaty is out of date. That it was written before we landed on the moon, and its primary purpose served to basically keep the United States and Russia from going to war over space. So they wanted to not militarize it. They wanted to make sure that if there was accidents, that the reciprocating country wouldn't hold their astronauts as prisoners. If, say, some cosmonauts accidentally landed in Alaska, we wouldn't take them as spies. So they wrote in that they're diplomats, that they're envoys of peace, and their reason for being in space is for peaceful purposes. Only 105 countries ratified it, so there's 90 something countries out there that never ratified the space treaty and aren't held account to those laws. And one of the things they said is that no sovereign nation can own any celestial body. So when the United States planted a flag on the moon, it wasn't like, I claim this moon for America. It was more like, hey, we made it here first, and we couldn't technically own the moon. The problem is that getting to and from space is a first world nation duty, ability. They're the ones with the money who can do it. And whoever gets there first and starts mining may be able to create a monopoly. And it may be so expensive to stop them from doing it that it'll just snowball from there, and they'll become super, super, super powerful. Now, you got to think about some things. I did some comparisons, like the 1849 gold rush in California. When gold was discovered in January of 1848, just right at the end of the Spanish-American War in Sutter's Mill, California, the only American presence in that entire region was 1,000 Marines and Navy sailors that were basically on the coast. And then there's a few scraggly settlers that had come into the area. It wasn't until 1851 when the first law enforcement officer made their way into California. So for 3 years, there was no law enforcement in California, and the pioneers and the miners that came in, they were opportunists, they were thieves, they were escaped convicts, they were, random people who left a factory in New York, like, I'm going to go look for gold. And they came across the country and they risked their lives to do it. And when they got there, there was no infrastructure, no government, no courthouses, no police, nothing. And they kind of created these mining camps that had loose sets of rules and kind of unwritten codes of conduct. And they ended up adopting the claim system that Mexico had through the Spanish, where you'd stake a claim, it was yours. If anyone worked it, you could kill them. The problem was that people would kill claim owners, then take their claims and do all these things. And the murder rates were absolutely bonkers because everything was based upon posse justice. And you would have mining camps like Paradise Mining Camp in California. Where that huge fire went through a couple years ago. Their murder rate in like 1840 and 1850 was higher than the death rate of any battlefield in World War II. like it's like 1 in 60 would die from murder in those mining camps. It's not very good odds. I think you and I all know more than 60 people, and just imagine just one of them getting murdered every year out of that group of 60. So it was very poorly run. Everyone was drinking whiskey. They're all going nuts from mercury poisoning. All of them have guns. They're doing battles with natives. They're doing battles with landowners. They're doing battles with everyone, with thieves. It was bonkers. Well, now imagine going into space, right? Right now, everyone goes into space is like Captain Hero of the Air Force, and they go up and they're explorers. They're like the Magellans and the Columbuses and the Amerigo Vespucci's of the era, and they're heroes, right? They're like seen as the best of the best. Well, you're not going to send Captain Hero of the Air Force to go mine a faraway moon and die from crazy cancers from galactic cosmic rays. No, you're going to find people and pay them pennies to go do that. And the entities that send them there are going to basically see these people as expendable. And it's going to be slave wages. It's going to be sweatshop conditions. And they're going to send them out there to die and maybe send remittances home. But the problem is that every single one of those people who go into space will have diplomatic immunity because they'll be envoys of peace due to the 1967 Outer Space Law. So you can imagine, like the Chinese government sets up a moon base, right, to mine helium-3. Well, they might not necessarily send a bunch of Chinese citizens. They might, do contracts to send people from Philippines or, favelas in Sao Paulo or whatever, send them up there. All of a sudden, they might not have any legal recourse for controlling those folks because the way the Outer Space Law is written is that only the origin country of the people up in space have jurisdiction over them. So if a person from Cambodia murders someone from Sweden, right, up in space, Sweden can't do anything about it. It has to be Cambodia who enforces the law. So if a bunch of people from who are sent up there to mine helium-3 all of a sudden take over the means of production at that entire facility, China won't be able to do anything about it legally because they might be able to put sanctions on Brazil or something, or wherever the host origin country was for those workers. But if it's a mixture of people from all over the world, they can't put sanctions on enough groups to do anything legally about those folks up in space. Plus, those host countries, they might not have enough financial ability to even approach doing something about it. They don't have a space program, and we can look at some really weird things. And then China, by law, wouldn't be allowed to send the weapons in space to do anything about it because they're not allowed to militarize space. So we could be looking to really weird situations. You have Russia, which traditionally produces a ton of hydrocarbons and a ton of metals, and the majority of their economy is based upon these raw materials. Well, if all of a sudden we're getting all of our energy from the moon and all of our metals from outer space, their entire economy will collapse. But they have a huge military and a really great space program. So there might be an incentive for Russia to become a pirate state whose entire role is to go up into space and steal stuff from Jeff Bezos, because what's Jeff Bezos going to do about it, right? So we might have really, really weird future in the next 50 years of pirate economies, diplomatic immunity cases, no enforcement of laws in space, crazy monopolies. It's all that's in the thesis, so it can get really weird if we don't start focusing as an international community and making a new cohesive law that can govern outer space. I mean, look at Elon Musk. Elon Musk is like one bad day away from becoming a Bond villain at this point. And let's say, there's some sort of accident with a Falcon 9 rocket, and there's a cover up or whatever, and NASA says, all right, we're going to pull your contract. Well, Elon might go, well, what, screw you, America. I'm going to set up my I'm going to set up SpaceX in Libya, and they never signed the Outer Space Treaty, and then he can go and claim the moon for himself, and it's going to cost anybody $1 trillion to do anything about it. And by the time they manage to get their act together to go up there and stop Elon, he's already made $50 trillion off of the helium-3 that's there, and he's so much more powerful than anybody could ever imagine. There are lawyers that are experts in space law that work for all these companies that look at all this stuff. And they know that there are so many loopholes right now that need to be closed, and they'll think they should be closed, but until they are, they will exploit the heck out of them. And, we're just going to be, peons that just watch these megalomaniacs in powerful nations just duke it out over the next 50 years, and hopefully out of it we reduce our carbon emissions, and life gets better a little bit that way. All right, let's roll on some more talk here. All right, I think I missed a couple of chats while I was doing that. This is from Deck P. If GME gave crypto dividend, would you need a crypto wallet, Ethereum, to receive it? Thanks. I'm not sure. Someone was pointing out crypto. What was the video I was watching last week? Crypto Charlie or something like that. And he was talking about that the dividend might be an NFT that locks in how many shares you own. So it's kind of like a fingerprint. And I don't know if it will go into our individual accounts or if it'll be held in a master wallet by GameStop with our names on it. Or if it will go into a brokerage account and kind of work like those preferred shares and just sit there as a non-tradable, non-fungible commodity. I'd be really interested to see exactly how it works. My original idea of it was they were going to make a cryptocurrency, and we would probably get one for every share we own. But if it's that NFT that's locked in, and it's like a code of how many shares we own in particular, that's something different. And that also gives us an exact amount of ownership around the world instantaneously without having to do a survey, without having to do votes. It'll just show us exactly who owns what. So I think that's I don't know. I'm curious to see what comes of it, and we got 2 days to find out, really. Okay. AJM, how can FTDs reset on a shorted stock? What happens to retail investors' money? Doesn't it like going back to shorting a company stock to oblivion until it crashes? Yes. If I understand Charlie's vids, when you've got a hedge fund or a group that shorted too much, then it owes. They need to close positions on all these synthetics they created. what they do is they create a swap and they trade that swap for commodities from another group. And because they did the trade, ownership names change and it resets the entire FTD. So the FTDs just vanish and it starts all over again. That's how I'm understanding it. If somebody knows better, please explain. I'm going to watch all those videos again and again and again and try to comprehend more. But that's how I think that they're resetting the FTDs in this case, especially the ones that are on the threshold list. Okay. Some C-Chan. Wade, can you clarify? It seems back in March we were focused on short need to cover, but if market maker or short hedge fund are selling naked short, the proceeds are going to them or to the company, i.e. GameStop, Nokia, whatever. The proceeds are going to the short hedge fund if they're selling short and naked, especially if they're selling naked. Most of the short sales are naked. What they do is they may go out and they may borrow shares and sell those legit as shorted shares, but I think a lot of times they're just selling naked, and when the FTDs get too great, then they go to an institution that has shares and then they borrow those shares and make it a legit short position after that. That's kind of what Reg Show was going to make them do. Yeah, so that's kind of how it's working. I think right now what they're doing is there are no shares left to borrow, so they're selling naked like crazy, and they're doing these swaps to reset the FTDs, and I don't know where the cash is going. It might be going to the Caymans at this point. Okay. My teeny Cato life. My sons are tool makers, and you nailed it, Houston. They make $45 an hour more than my daughter with 2 degrees. It's our profession if you're not college bound. It is, seriously. That's I was talking last week about where I'd put my money, and my friend Jeremy and his little school that runs like the summer camp for kids, and they do all sorts of cool metal work, and they learn to work with plasma torches and laser cutters and all sorts of cool stuff. Even if you don't do it as a hobby, learning it, or start doing it as a career, learning it as a hobby is amazing. Like just knowing how this stuff is made, and the idea that, you know, if we are in a zombie apocalypse, you can make anything you need. I say go for it. Learn machining, learn welding, learn how to measure stuff and read schematics and build these things. So yeah, if you want to make a killing, or your kids want to make a killing and they're interested with working with metals, they can probably do an apprentice program, learn to machine, and end up working at Blue Origin and get all sorts of crazy amounts of like profit sharing or stock options and whatnot. So yeah, let's do it. Do something we like that's awesome. Andrew Stewart, where do you like to ski other than Switzerland? Are you a ripper? I in my past I have been a ripper. So I've got friends that live in Switzerland, and in the wintertime plane tickets are stupid cheap. And they're in Cloisters, which is like Cloisters Davos where they do the World Economic Forum. And I can buy a round trip ticket from Seattle to Zurich for like $400 in the wintertime. Crazy cheap. And then for $300, there's a train ticket from Zurich to Cloisters, and it includes 8 days of skiing and my rentals. And then we might go to a couple of places and whatnot. So basically for like $1,000, I can spend 2 weeks in Switzerland, which is cheaper than actually being in Seattle. So it's that's why I do that. Try to do that every year if I can. It's the most fun I have all year. But in Seattle area, I like to ski at Crystal Mountain. They're getting really expensive. I usually do a few trips to Whistler because the exchange rate's awesome, and they've got the biggest terrain in North America, and you know, smoking hot Australian ladies everywhere. It was for a while really cheap to ski at Stevens Pass, but they got new ownership and the prices went through the roof. It used to be for like $40. You could ski all day, get a chicken pot pie, Caesar salad, and a hot chocolate, and it was just an awesome deal. But the prices have just gone bonkers on the ski areas, and they've been hit by, shortened seasons, by COVID, by all sorts of stuff. So I wouldn't doubt if we see prices go up even higher just so they can make ends meet. But my siblings for my 40th birthday this year bought me an Icon Pass, which is good for 70 ski resorts all over North America and around the world. So you might see me doing some shows from cold exotic locations this winter if I get my act together and can get out on the road. So look forward to that. So I'll probably be hitting up all over, just get in the truck and drive, go everywhere. If you don't have kids, you can afford to go skiing. That's that's how I see it. All right. William Morgan, if hedge funds get margin calls, market makers and brokers will lose potentially trillions of dollars. They're as guilty as the hedge funds. They are. Those guys will get absolutely obliterated. And that's why I think it was a big sign that all those people who testified in front of Congress back in February and March were talking about, we're prepared if Citadel dies. And that's I think what they were like, hey, Citadel can go under, we can take over their market maker ability, don't worry about it. And I think everyone fully realizes that they're so over leveraged on this that no matter what plays they make to try and counteract it, that the amount of money they may possibly owe for how many naked shares they create as a market maker might put them under forever. Okay. Let's see here. Did you get the curry? I don't know yet. I'll have to ask if it arrived. I had it was sent to my dad's P.O. box because he's the one who has a P.O. box. And I have not talked to him and see if he's gotten it yet. But I'll see him tomorrow evening, so I'll find out. But thank you. I am so looking forward to that. I'm going to make everybody an awesome curry meal of some kind with that Jamaican curry. When zombie apocalypse. Okay. All right. Okay. People are saying the sound is good. Excellent. All right. Oh, my questions just reset here. Let me see if I can. Have you seen The Expanse? This is from Snowboard 1201. Heck yes, I've seen The Expanse. I also know two of the actors who were on it. In the third season, Elizabeth Mitchell, who was in Lost, she lives in Bainbridge, where I am. And then Cass Anvar, who played the pilot for the first 4.5 seasons, he is friends with my sister's roommate. So I've got two connections to The Expanse. I would love for them to hire me and to be a scientific advisor. That'd be fantastic. But The Expanse is an amazing show. If you guys haven't seen it, watch it. It actually ties in. I used from the books. I use each chapter of my thesis. I used a quote from the books because the general idea was this idea about colonialism in the books. And if you think about colonial America, these Europeans came and settled America and started exploiting the land for all these resources. Well, the European settlers, after a generation or two, they're like, hey, why should we be sending all this stuff back to England when we can have it? And thus, American Revolution. They wanted their cake and eat it too, and they fought to keep it. Well, now imagine we send people to the moon on long-term colonies, and there's people who are born there and raised there and work there. What is to keep them from saying, hey, why are we sending all these resources back to Earth so some grandchild of Jeff Bezos can make $1 bajillion? Why don't we just keep it for ourselves? And we could see a space revolutionary war as a result. The Expanse was kind of talking about that you had people who lived in the asteroid belt working day and night in terrible conditions, their bodies getting ruined. The kids have weird, growth diseases from being in microgravity, and they're sick and tired of someone on Earth living the life of luxury off of their hard labor, and so they kind of have this ongoing revolt. based on that. So I think it's kind of inherent in the human condition that you won't, after a while, accept somebody else making money off of your labor when they aren't out there doing it with you, and you feel like you own this place and not them. So the Expanse is awesome. It goes from there with like alien technology and whatnot, but the underlying conditions that are there are kind of what I wrote about as a potential future in my master's thesis. Okay. How much lower do I think metamaterial is going to go? Ooh, it might go pretty low over the next few weeks if the buy pressure just keeps being just evaporating until people are forced to actually buy the stock. So I wouldn't doubt if we see a dip. I mean, we'll get the cup and handle on it. And I'm not really a graph guy, but we'll probably get a cup and handle on metamaterials with that, because they'll push it down, and then all of a sudden they'll have to buy because there'll be a whole bunch of shares that didn't get their preferred shares. There will be FTD list. They're on the threshold list. We'll have the T plus 35 because of the QSIP change. So there's going to be all sorts of recalls happening, I think, and the price will probably go back up again after that. I forgot to get my water today, so I'm drying out right now. Whew. Okay. Did I miss another question here? No, I think I got it. Okay. There's a huge expiration of $800 call contracts for this week, biggest in the chain. Yeah, there's 500,000 contracts that are set to expire this week. I don't think we'll see $800 by the end of the week at all, even close. So a whole bunch will get vaporized. Hopefully people will invest in a spread of some kind and not get hurt too bad on that. But if we see any type of price increase this week that puts more and more calls in the money, and we might be able to see some gamma from it if we're lucky. But right now it seems like it's the basement seems to be like that 190 area for GME and just kind of floating up and down from that at the moment. But the volume is just insanely low. It's really hard to tell like an actual price with the volume being that low, what the demand really is. So Iron Tunic, Houston, what can we expect from AMC FTDs that are supposed to be covered tomorrow the 13th? I'm not understanding this correct. Well, they got reset. So there's now no requirement for those guys to cover because they did a swap. They did a swap. They traded commodities with another group, and when you reassign ownership of those commodities, it takes them off the FTD list and it starts all over again. It's a stupid loophole. It should be when you trade, the responsibility goes to whoever you traded with. So it's absolutely silly that loophole exists and allows them to reset those FTDs. So, Lockdown Haircut. Do you know if the metamaterials reverse merger also needed a company name change to force naked shorts to cover? The QSIP change, like the little code that's attached to the electronically traded stock, that changed with the merger when it moved from the Toronto Exchange to the NASDAQ, and as a result there's supposed to be a recall of all the borrowed shares so that stuff can all be resolved. I don't think we've seen that recall yet because the volumes of Torchlight metamaterials leading up to the merger were astronomical. We're talking like 200% of all the available shares out there were trading every day for 10 days prior to the merger. 200, 300, 400 million shares are trading, and now we're seeing like 20 million shares trade. which is just such a pico amount compared to how many shares are actually in the float and available. So I think everybody's just in this weird holding pattern right now, and that's where we are. Okay. Yeah, I'll post. Someone's saying they want to read my thesis. I'll post the link for you guys on Twitter. It's like as all thesis, it's kind of repetitive because I can say what I need to say in 15 pages, but they want it to be like 80 pages, so I just have to say the same thing over and over again. And they're like, "Oh, very good. That's good. That's good thesis. It's very repetitive." Okay. Ethan Green, did Richard Branson actually go to space yesterday or not really? That's kind of where this tourist mechanism comes into play, is that they launch you up and you basically touch space and then come back down. So you get a few minutes of weightlessness while you're at the apex of that trajectory, and you float up there for a second and then you fall back to Earth. You're not doing an orbit. Same thing's going to be happening with Blue Origin's. I always get their ships wrong. New Shepard, I think, is the one that's going to be the space one, and New Glenn is the giant one. And they go up, they touch space, and they float back down. They land back on Earth, 15 minutes later, for $200,000. You get to go up there and get your picture taken with the horizon of the Earth, and stare out the window for a little bit. And then you strap yourself back in and land back on Earth. In those moments, you are space-ish. You aren't in a trajectory that can get you into orbit, which I think would be way cooler to do an orbit of Earth and be able to see more than just like the Texas desert. But you don't quite get that for the $200,000 it costs to do the trip. So they're touching space, but I wouldn't say they're in space. There's still a smidge of atmosphere up there. If you were to leave the cabin, you would your blood would boil and your eyes would freeze over and everything, and then you'd burn up in the atmosphere on your way back down. But they're not truly in outer space yet. They're not. They haven't left the atmosphere totally enough to really be considered outer space. But they're close. They're touching it. They're it's just little scratch space, and then they come back down. Okay. All right. Cat order for surveillance September 3rd. FINRA ADF revamp. That's from Two Wheel Freedom. I don't quite. You have to unpack that one for me. I don't quite know what that means. Sitting Bull. How difficult and costly will it be to mine helium-3 on the moon? Well, just to get something out of Earth's orbit into space is about $10,000 per kilogram in fuel and time, energy to get it up there. We would need to put a lot of material on the moon to set up the infrastructure for mining. So it's going to be very expensive to get that done. I would guess in the hundreds of billions, if not $1 trillion, to really set up a competent camp or colony on the moon to start mining. The way they mine is probably a few different methods. In my thesis, there's a guy from I think the University of Wisconsin Engineering who patented a few different machines to possibly mine the lunar surface for helium-3. But the way helium-3 gets on the moon is that it's from the solar winds of the sun, and so the sun's radiating these bits of material that are the result of nuclear reactions inside the sun. So this isotope of helium that has 2 protons, 1 neutron, thus helium-3, blast off the sun, the solar winds, and when they hit the Earth, they hit our atmosphere, and because helium-3 is so much lighter than any of the other components of our atmosphere, it essentially bounces off and goes back into space. When it hits the moon, these isotopes are very likely negatively charged, and they hit the dust on the moon, and they'll statically bond, kind of like a sock from the dryer. And so for billions of years, the surface has been getting hit with this helium-3 and statically bonding to all the dust on the moon. And so the dust is just littered full of the stuff that's bound to the little sharp grains of lunar dust. And you're going to have to do a couple of things to shake it loose. So you'll probably take the dust, put it into a chamber that has some sort of atmosphere, run a charge one way or the other through the material to get the static bonding undone so that the helium rises to the top, and then you can kind of mine the helium out of that. That seems to be the chief mechanism that they're going to be using to mine the helium-3, using that buoyancy as sort of a classifier for the material. I'm sure there's other methods. There might be ways they can kind of, put a charge through the helium and put a charge at some other plate and then collect the helium and then statically bond to that and scrape it off. But whatever the mechanism is, you need to mine a large area of helium of dust to get a comparable amount of helium-3 to make it worthwhile. So these machines will probably have to be pretty large and either really big or really numerous in order to make it effective. And to get that much material into space is going to cost a fortune. And regardless of how much automation there is, you still are going to need people to repair these machines. The lunar environment is harsh. That dust is unforgiving, and it's incredibly sharp and will slice through everything. And just if it gets into any joints and spacesuits or machinery, it will just grind and cut that stuff up. So you not only are going to have to send, people there, you're going to have to send ongoing maintenance equipment. You're going to have to send lubricants and parts, and there may come a point where they can start, mining metals out of rocks on the moon. There's ways of getting aluminum, and from the action you can also get oxygen out of it. So you can start mining basic materials, but until you have the infrastructure in place to do that, you're going to have to be spending a fortune sending those pre-made components to the moon. So it's going to be expensive, but I wouldn't doubt if we in the next 15 or 20 years start seeing the first benefits of that mining operation come to Earth, and the first at-scale helium-3 reactors going online about that time. Okay. Backup bump. Why haven't we been walking the moon more now with newer tech? Girlfriend was wondering this weekend. She questioned the authenticity of moonwalking as well. Basically what happened was we got to the moon. We did it. Screw you, USSR. We now have a whole bunch of debt from the Vietnam War we need to focus on. And we just stopped going. That's kind of it. We did it. Screw you. We don't need to do it anymore. And we spent so much money on programs that, the Star Wars system in the 80s, tax cuts, on bank bailouts, on all sorts of stuff that didn't necessarily have a long-term investment strategy for the human race, but were kind of short-term, short-sighted things we tripped and fell into. So that's why we didn't have a permanent lunar presence. As much as I love the International Space Station is a giant waste of money. For the price it cost us to build the space station, we could have had a permanent presence on the moon for the last 30 years. But instead we have a tin can floating around in circles. It's given us great scientific results, because we learn things about what happens to human bodies for long periods in microgravity or zero gravity. And that's kind of where we are, is that I think we spent money wrong, and we should have been making a space program that pays for itself earlier. We should have been focusing after landing on the moon, and we realized what the moon was made of. We should have been spending more time capitalizing on that and using that money to pay for further space exploration. So that's what these private entrepreneurs are seeing, is this huge financial benefit to mining space, and they realize it's going to be a self-perpetuating investment, that they're going to be making so much money they can push further and further and further out there to do more and more spectacular things. And it was a vision that some had at NASA, but the bean counters did not understand. So that's where we are. Okay. Sounds like a good movie. Yeah, it's. I almost had my master's thesis option for a TV show about like a realistic future in space, and then everything fell apart because COVID. But I worked on it. I was, yeah. Well, maybe someday it'll also happen. Okay. Trying to find a question here. Sitting Bull, can you set up a sub membership along the lines of something like $2 to $4.99 and make it payable via PayPal to an email address of your posts? Your Patreon costs is how much? I don't use CashApp. My Patreon, sorry, Sitting Bull, my Patreon is send whatever you want. I don't have any membership categories. Some people send $1, some people send more than that, and I appreciate all of them. I really do. If I can, I would like to be able to do this mostly full time for you all. So the more that comes in, the more I'm able to do that. At least until MOAS happens, and then we can all just sit on beaches or something and hang out at Club Med together. Yeah. So we're. So I think everybody who can send stuff in, it's absolutely a miracle that you guys care what I have to say, and I'm so thankful for that. I do have a PayPal. Problem is that then my email address goes out to everyone, so I might have to figure out a secondary email address that I can attach to that, and maybe I can do a PayPal. I do have the Cash App on the description of the video if you want to send tips that way. I appreciate it very much. Yeah. So, but the Patreon, people get confused because it shows like join the Patreon and it says some dollar amount, and that dollar amount is how much I get each month from subscriptions, which is like $300 and something. Which thanks so much. That covers electric and phone and a lot of things that I use here. But you can send whatever amount you want into that, and I'll figure out a way to get the PayPal going. With an email address that isn't the one I use all the time, so that doesn't get spread all over the internet and I have to answer emails constantly. Okay. David Morgan, do you think the FBI has taken or will take interest in their market manipulation? They had less on Jordan Belfort. I think so. I think they won't do anything about it though until some very famous rich people lose a lot of money, and when those well-known powerful people lose money, that's when the FBI will actually do something about it. Like with Bernie Madoff, no one cared about Madoff until he lost rich people money, and he's the only one who went to prison after the 2008 collapse because he lost rich people money. The people who lost you and me money in 2008, they didn't go to prison because we don't matter the same way rich people do to those regulators. So there we go. Yeah, Stacey Melton says, hit the like button, guys. Yeah, hit that like button. Like and subscribe and all that fun jazz. Okay. Oh, and of course that thing's resetting all over again. Jason Butcher. Houston, do you wear t-shirts? I'm making some dumb money screen prints. Love to send you one. Wilder Lack on Etsy. I'll DM you on Twitter. Yeah, I wear t-shirts. I don't always wear my crazy shirts. I have t-shirts under them. Like, what am I wearing today? I'm wearing an Olympic National Park t-shirt under this one. But yeah, I wear t-shirts, especially when it's like really hot and sweaty. I can't do too many layers. Yeah, and I love a good goofy graphic tee. Why not? Give it to me. Okay. Searching for questions. Blackstone asks, you think it will squeeze someday? I mean, we got all these rules active, but still goes on. SEC does nothing. Do you think it will squeeze AMC? I think it will squeeze because they will push us out as far as they can with basically funny money for as long as they can. But in the end, someone needs to get paid. And if they don't get paid, then they can't pay their bills, and they got to margin call these folks that have been borrowing their money. So if there's a credit crunch from the banks, they may be forced to margin call. If if those obligations get stretched out too thin, they may be forced to margin call simply because the government makes them do it, because they won't be able to get bailed out until they can prove that they don't have the cash in reserves. So yeah, that's it's coming. Just how and when, it's honestly, it's lasted longer than I thought they had the financial means to make it last. So that's where we are. Dr. Stonk, when do I think the bull run will dry up on SPY? This surely cannot be sustainable. I don't think it is. I think the bull run will dry up when we see when we get one of the big bubbles popping, get the debt bubble popping, we get a credit crunch due to the reverse repo market, or we get the MOAS. Those are the big three I can think of at the moment. That's when the SPY will dive and VIX will go the opposite direction. Because it always does. I mean, every single time we have a market dip, every 10 years, 20 years, whatever, we get a correction. The SPY will go back up after that. It will dip down and then recover and then start climbing again. So it's a good time to buy into it when we get our attendees. So yeah, Standard & Poor's on average is 8% year over year for like 100 years now. But it still gets hit every once in a while with a big correction. And we just got to wait for that correction to happen and then buy it up when it does. All right. Eggplantus Rex, Robert Heinlein. Robert Heinlein talks a lot about people in space. Robert Heinlein books are mostly pretty good. When he got older and a little more senile, it was mostly just about like his hot lady heroes having three-ways. But there's a lot of really cool sci-fi in the Robert Heinlein books that you can like find it in amongst the him writing out his sexual fantasies there and there. Yeah. Okay. Richard Rolfe, Metamaterials got shorted to oblivion, so it doesn't have the same visibility like GME and AMC, etc. Is there a chance to get pushed to zero? No. Metamaterial can't get pushed to zero. They're sitting on so much money right now. It's really, really hard to short a company to zero that's sitting on like hundreds of millions of dollars in cash. An investment bank offered them $500 million before the merger to buy the whole company. And they laugh that off because they know what they have, and they know it's worth money, and that the price right now is just manipulation of their stock. The analytics show that the company in a decade will be a $10 billion a year company in revenue, and their market cap right now is $1 billion. So if a company's making $10 billion a year, you should expect a market cap around $50 billion, which is 50 times the price it's trading at now. So it is a long-term play, and with all the patents they have and the products that are ready to go to market, there is the opportunity that someone will buy them. We saw Stamps.com get bought last week by a private equity firm for like $6.6 billion, which was like 30% over their market value. So when a company like this is purchased, it'll be purchased at a significant premium compared to what it's trading at. So if there is some sort of takeover of them, the price will be more than what it is right now. That's just how that stuff works. All right. I'm looking. I might have. I got like 5 more minutes on this, folks, and I can do a show tomorrow too, for an hour or two, and we'll jump back and I'll try to read up more on the swaps and get my brain wrapped around them a little more. So all right, Varsity gets the Bumber of shares on the public and it's over? I'm not quite sure what that question is, so let's move on. Okay. Everyone watching, as Mark Allen, everyone's watching daily price movement. When it is obvious, they are rushing new rules out and won't let it squeeze till they're in place. Why else are we seeing hundreds of new rules and amendments? I think, yeah, the Rocky Outcrop talked about this when I did the show with him last week, is that, you know, they make these rules, and it's still people who have to enforce these rules and monitor the volumes and trades and prices. And, you know, they make the rule and then it makes it harder to do these things in the future. But what it doesn't necessarily do is delete what's happened in the past. And so that may take time to actually go back through and forensically look at everything and figure out and unravel. And so it's a very time-consuming effort. I mean, you know how hard it is for me to get my microphone levels right. Now imagine how hard it is for somebody to go through a whole bunch of cooked books for 1,000 different hedge funds and figure out where they move stuff to. It's a very time-consuming effort. They might make the new rules, but it can take a long time to kind of unravel what has happened. We know shady stuff has happened. We just can't pinpoint exactly what move went where and who did what and paid who money and moved money offshore and whatever. So, yeah. So that's kind of where we are. Andrew Stewart, do you listen to Ween? I don't know Ween, so no, I have not listened to Ween. Sorry. Truth State, Houston, what is your opinion on why society in general has no vision vested into the future? Progress is primarily being vested onto private enterprises instead of motivated through national programs. I think that is a huge drawback for us in these modern times. When we push for space, so 1957 is when Explorer 1 went into space, the first U.S. satellite. 12 years later, we landed at somebody on the moon. Right? We went from like, hey, we got something into space to somebody on the moon 12 years later. That is a dedication and a single-mindedness that this country and other nations in the world really haven't done in a while. China might be the only nation right now that really can put single-mindedness and get people to work and have them just complete a vision at this point. It might be because of the top-down structure of government. But, you know, look at the Hubble Space Telescope was proposed sometime in the 1970s and finally launched in 1990. So it took, 20-something years, 15 years or so to get the Hubble Space Telescope up there. In 1997, the James Webb Telescope was proposed. It was supposed to cost $500 million, and in 5 years from when the budget was proposed, they were going to have the James Webb Telescope in space in 2002. The first mirror section of the James Webb Telescope wasn't done until 2011. The launch was supposed to be shortly after that, got pushed to 2014, 2015, 2017, 2019. Now it's for this year, and I don't think it's going to launch this year. So we're at 24 years later and $8 billion later on a project that's supposed to take 5 years and $500 million. And that's because of the way our government operates. When we have an interesting scientific project that's going to be done that can benefit humanity as a whole, what ends up happening is a whole bunch of Congress people go, well, it's not happening in my district, so why should I vote for this? And the people at NASA and JPL, they got to figure, okay, how are we going to get, Joe Blow's district involved in this? Okay, we'll make this little section of satellite in your town, and then someone else is like, hey, what about my town in Maryland? What about my place in Florida? What about my place in Alabama? And so the James Webb Telescope is primary JPL, and it's made of beryllium, and the beryllium comes from Delta, Utah, the only place in the world you can get beryllium. The beryllium, Delta, Utah, gets refined at a place in Ohio. So it gets on a train, goes to Ohio, gets refined. So there's really two locations where beryllium is made into products. And what has happened is that that beryllium gets mined in Utah, sent to Ohio, then goes to like 60 other locations around the country to get a little finishing coat here, a little polish there, whatever, completely unnecessarily. And it each mirror travels like 60,000 miles before it ever ends up at JPL where it's going to get put into place. All because every single one of these little Congress people want to make sure a little piece of it is made here, a little piece of it is made there in all their little districts. And it takes forever. And all we had to do was like build a warehouse in Ohio where the beryllium is refined, have everything made right there, done, ship it to JPL, gets put on the satellite and goes to space. Done. And that's exactly what the people at NASA had in mind when they proposed the James Webb Telescope. But it gets perverted from there. And because we don't have the single-mindedness anymore, everyone wants to see what they can get out of it. And it really ruins our ability to do a good job and to do it quickly. And so these projects get delayed. And then each new administration comes in, and every 48 years completely changes the vision for NASA. So, we had Clinton administration wanted to do a Mars mission, whatever. George Bush comes in, cancels the Mars mission. Obama comes in, changes the Mars mission. Trump comes in, changes their Mars mission. And so, Trump's like, oh, we're going to go back to the moon instead of Mars. Well, okay. Now we got all these ships that were half built, and we got to change them all for a moon mission rather than a Mars mission. And there's just no cohesion in policy between one executive to the next, because they can kind of run the policy of each the leadership of NASA, each administration. And so, we should have had a next generation spacecraft built 10 years ago when we pulled the space shuttle out of service. But because NASA's mission got changed every single time there was a change in government, it just messed everything up. So humanity in general, like the progress that's getting made is in smaller tech and consumer technology, but I don't think we're seeing it governmentally on these large scales at the moment, except out of places like China, maybe India and Japan. But we're trying to rely on these private companies, and we know for a fact that these private companies are going to screw us in the end, because they're not going to be loyal to the United States. They're loyal to shareholders that are loyal to how much money they can make in the end. And it's gonna bite us in the butt eventually. The beauty of the space race through the 1960s created 400,000 new scientists that worked on the project. It made the schools in the United States the best public school system in the country for that period. We tripled the number of high school graduates. We tripled the number of people going to college. We became like the most educated country in the world as a result of the space race. So once we got there, we just cut funding for it all. And we closed down these programs, and we cheated kids out of their future as a result. So the boomers that benefited from these programs, they're the ones who cut these programs. We have a local school system here, the South Kitsap school system, which has amazing sports programs, and they've sent a bunch of major leaguers and NFL players out there. They needed to pass a school budget, like a new bond levy, and they couldn't get anybody to vote for it. And the only way they could get people to vote for it was, hey, we're going to eliminate the football program if you don't vote for this. And everyone's like, oh, I got to vote for the program so that kids have math books. We're just doing it wrong, man. We need to turn our schools into palaces. We need to educate everyone we possibly can out there. And we need to go back to, or not just to go back, we need to actually have a system of meritocracy so that the best and brightest achieve, and we can filter them to the top. Because right now we don't have that. We've got a system of cronyism and nepotism and a lot of those isms that really stagnate creativity and progress in the country. And I want to see, the American dream not just be words of, in America you can do anything, but actually see it in practice. And kick ass. To be great, you have to do great things. So let's just do them already. We think of the things that you're proudest of most about America, and oftentimes they're feats of engineering, right? Hoover Dam, Grand Coulee Dam, Golden Gate Bridge, the Erie Canal, these grand feats of engineering are when we pool our resources and we get together and we go, let's kick some ass and do something cool, and we do it. So the fact we aren't willing to invest in those things anymore because of people can pretend like the taxes are going to matter or whatever, when the benefits from those things are just huge. Can you imagine if they would try to launch the GPS system today, how long and convoluted it would be? It would take 50 years for us to get our act together and get the GPS satellites up there. And today, the fact we've got all these weather satellites that were put up by the U.S. government and monitor the entire planet so that everyone around the world knows where these weather systems are saves probably millions of lives every few years. Hurricanes are no longer washing ashore without people knowing. We know exactly when tornadoes are going to hit. We can reroute shipping and close airports and save lives and time and energy and products. And we don't seem to really understand that it took a grand vision to get that stuff up there and a lot of hard work by previous generations. And the generation that benefited the most from these inventions seems to be the ones that don't care about continuing that legacy. That they were flower childs in the 60s, became Gordon Geckos in the 80s, got their pensions and they got theirs, and screw the rest of us. So I would like to see a grand vision manifest itself again and actually kick ass and do awesome things. And I just really got off on a tangent on that. So true state, I hope I answered your question somewhere in there. All right. I went a little past what I said it was. So I might as well just cut it clean at 2:30, and let's see here. I can probably answer one or two more questions in 3 minutes. Andrew Stewart, is it true that St. Louis sits on a major fault line and is overdue in a tectonic event? Well, St. Louis area sits on what's called the Madrid Fault, and the Madrid Fault, I can't remember the exact date of when it had its big earthquake. Early 1800s, like 1804, 1803. The estimates for that earthquake are in the 8 to 9 range. It's a very, very large quake. It rang the church bells in Boston, hundreds and hundreds of miles away. And the movement of the earth caused the Mississippi River to run backwards. These huge geysers appeared as groundwater spouted from the earth. And we have no idea how many people died, because that was the early frontier for these western settlers. And, large portions of them may have died because they were living in log cabins and mud huts, and those things just collapsed and got covered with Mississippi water. And there was just really no way to tell who got absolutely eviscerated by that earthquake. But the Madrid Fault is a very scary fault, and I'll have to look and see with what regularity they think it shook. But it's a weird fault because usually major faults like that aren't in the middle of continents unless there's a rift zone happening. But my guess is it's a stress fault as a result of you've got the Atlantic Ocean splitting in half, right? So you have this spreading ridge. And so North America moves along, and then it hits the Pacific Ocean. The Pacific plate's denser, so it goes underneath, and it squeezes and wrinkles the Pacific coast. So I wouldn't doubt if that motion twists and turns the North American continent in ways that puts stress somewhere in the middle, and that's where the Madrid Fault lies. But yeah, if the Madrid Fault went off today with an earthquake similar to what happened in the early 1800s, the St. Louis would be flattened. It would be, 10% of the city would be dead because they've never done any retrofitting whatsoever. Their construction is Midwest construction, which does not take into that shear motion at all. And if you're in St. Louis, you're screwed if the Madrid Fault has a big one. What's the best time to go to the dentist? Tooth hurty. Go now. Sheep ducking cow you. Make an appointment now. If your teeth hurts, make sure it's not abscess, because that's not going to go septic and go to your brain. That's how people died, pre-fluoride. So turn off my stream and go to the dentist, buddy. get fixed. All right. Okay. All right. I'm not seeing too many questions. It's 2:30 now, and I got to get going. Okay. I want to thank everybody so much. I'm sorry the microphone spit up and was terrible. I think what happened was that Windows did an update and restarted my computer, and that just deleted all of my settings. And hopefully I won't do that again. I'll catch you guys tomorrow. We'll do another show tomorrow. I'll remember to actually get myself a water glass, and I won't fade like the dried raisin I am right now. Thank you, everybody. Let's see what's going on. All right. Thanks so much, everybody. Have a great day, and I'll catch you tomorrow.